Good morning, everybody. It is March 26, 2023. This is Man Coverage. This is Knoxville Nate and James Bonneville. James, how are you doing today, sir?
Any better be a crime.
I like it. We're both a little bit tired today, so we're going to give it the full Monty and see if we can wake up a little bit with everybody as we are doing a little bit earlier this morning. We got a nice guest coming on today, former national champion, 1998 Tennessee Volunteer, Eric Westmoreland is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking all things college football as we always do. But obviously we have the basketball tournament going on right now. It's March Madness, and March Madness it is. I've never seen a tournament like this in the history of my lifetime. It's just been bonkers. I mean, there's never been a Final Four that didn't have one number one seed in it. And I mean, some of these number one seeds have been gone for a long time.
Yeah.
James, I just got to ask you, I mean, we're obviously a football show here, but I got to imagine that, everything that's gone on in college athletics has started to catch up. I mean, there's no more, Kentucky making the tournament, going to the Final Four every year, Duke, North Carolina. I mean, the Blue Bloods, most of them were out in the first round. It just seems like it's more competitive now because some of these smaller teams actually have these guys together for more than 1 year, whereas a lot of programs, even here in Knoxville and Tennessee, a lot of these guys come in for 1 year and they're gone. I mean, we actually have a little bit more of a group of seniors, but a lot of these teams, they play 1 year and they're one and done, or they play 1 year to school and they transfer. How do you think that's affecting, sports in general, and especially what we've seen in this tournament so far?
Well, I mean, how do you have any continuity if you're not together for more than a year? I mean, heck, I mean, even from a fan's perspective, heck, you have a hard time keeping track of who the heck's on your roster. It's gotten so out of hand where if you don't get it right away, you transfer out and go somewhere else. Well, there's no guarantees you're going to get it there either. And I mean, in some of these process, I mean, think about when you were a freshman in college or heck, a senior in high school, and take that all the way to the time you were a senior in college. How much your body changed during that time period. Not only your physical body, but your brain too as well. I mean, you're practically a different person. You're more of an adult, and you're throwing these guys together like they're playing pickup basketball, like it's an AAU team, and you're seeing a lot of the blue bloods getting knocked off because you're getting a lot better continuity. I mean, remember back in the day when Mercer beat Duke in the first round of the playoffs? I mean, that Mercer team had players that were playing together for 4 or 5 years. They knew each other. They knew each other's intricacies, everything. And now we're getting teams that you don't know who's going to be on the roster from second to second.
Yeah, why did you have to bring that up? Ouch.
I know. But I mean, that's just one of many examples. I mean, you can go through the tournament this year and see the examples. I mean, heck, that's the one thing when you play a 1-game playoff, man, you got to come to show up because if the other guys do, I mean, Fairleigh Dickinson pulled off the 116 upset over Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, that had never happened before. And, then a couple of years ago, Virginia, who was the number one overall seed, they went down to Maryland, Baltimore County. And then, we had it happen again with the number one overall seed, Purdue, getting beat by a team that shouldn't even have been in the tournament.
Exactly.
But, you see like this FAU team, they play together. It's just basketball. Anyone can win on any given night. But, there's definitely a lack of, continuity. If you think back to the teams like, the Duke teams of the 90s, the guys all played for 3 or 4 years, minimum. Some of the guys redshirted and played there 5 years. But you just don't see that anymore. I mean, especially with the Dukes and the Kentuckys of the world, those guys are there for a year, maybe, and then they're gone. And I feel like that's affected things and definitely changed the game a little bit. And we could see it unfolding before our eyes in this tournament. And now, it's fun to watch, but it definitely has to be disheartening for some of these guys that are used to, making deep runs in the tourney because it's gotten very hard for them to do that when they're playing some of these teams. That's why I love about the March Madness and the NCAA tournament is you get these teams that are smaller colleges. They're
Yeah.
from, small conferences. They shouldn't be able to beat these teams. But as we've seen the last couple of weeks, they certainly can.
Oh, completely. I mean, heck, you go back in the past with like Butler. I mean, little old freaking Butler. No, I mean, heck, you go back to 99 when Gonzaga upset Minnesota. Who the
Yeah.
heck heard of Gonzaga unless you were a really big John Stockton fan? You know, all you have is one day. You got to show up for that one day. And if you've never been to one of those first and second round games, it's a weird environment. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I mean, there's not many fans there, but when one of the favored teams goes down, everybody there rallies behind the underdog because everybody loves seeing the upset happen there.
Yeah, no, that's what makes the tournament great, and they've definitely had their share of upsets this year.
Yeah.
I think this has probably been one of the most the most upsets I've ever seen in a tournament. And I just wanted to ask you, I mean, in regards to our show, can we see something like this happening in
Yes.
college football? Do you
Yeah.
see this? Do you see it becoming more competitive, like obviously basketball has become?
Well, I mean, basketball, it's a lot easier because you're only dealing with 13, 14 people. When you're dealing with college football, where you're dealing with, 110 roster 105, 110 rosterable positions, including walk-ons, it becomes a little more difficult. I mean, you look at your mid-majors, their biggest problem that they've come down the pike with is depth.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep that depth up. And the fear factor I have is you're going to see a lot of these mid-major programs where you look at that Knoll kid from Kansas State, originally started off at Arkansas Little Rock, ends up at Kansas State. And I mean, the show he put on yesterday against FAU was amazing. And are these mid majors now turning into minor league systems for the power conferences? And that partially scares me too as well, because you're not really developing anything. You're just basically the kids getting pushed along the system.
Yeah, well, we've seen that, the last couple of years. The kid from Incarnate Word that went to Cam Ward that went to
Cam
Washington
Ward.
State, with a
Yep.
kid from Florida State, the defensive end, who
Jared
started.
Verse.
Yep, Verse that started at a very small school. The kid from Old Dominion that went to White that went to Georgia Tech, who's going to get drafted in the first round. That's the thing that I don't like is some of these smaller schools that are getting these kids in, developing them, making them into great football players. As soon as they have done that, they jump ship and go somewhere else. And I feel like that's kind of unfair to these programs that have developed these kids.
Well, I mean, look at how many times you've seen a kid be a project where like Jared Verse is a perfect example where the kid was what 6'5", 200 pounds playing tight end, and they moved him to D end at a 1AA.
Yeah.
And during COVID, the kid balled out in the weight room and built himself up, and look at where he is now. I mean, now if I'm a power conference team, do you go after those project kids? Because let's be honest, it may work out, it may not. You just don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if we see more of a shift in college football like we've seen in college basketball. But I definitely feel like it's coming. We've had Cincinnati kind of come up out of nowhere, picking up guys. You can fill gaps in your team via the portal. And the biggest position, obviously, is quarterback. If you do not have that quarterback that can get you over the hump, you do now have the ability to go out and get one. And you can come out and throw the guy into the mix and bam, quarterback problem solved via the portal. So, that we got some teams right now that have gotten some guys in the portal. They've got, some guys that they've had on their roster and they're battling it out because we've got spring practice going on. First off, I want to ask you, James, spring practice. Why do they do this? Some of our listeners out there might not be really familiar with, why they have this spring ball and why they make some people make such a big deal about it. What is the point of spring practice, and what do you think most teams get out of it? What they're doing right now.
Well, I think it's different for different programs depending on what your state you're in. You look at a program like Colorado right now, they're building culture, and then they're implementing their systems on offense and defense and special teams during this time period. They want to get a head start before they get their 15 practices in the fall to make sure they got that good running start when they're going in, especially if you're radically changing your offense. I mean, those 15 practices become very, very valuable in the whole, because you only get 2 hours a day to get that done. So you got to be very efficient in that spot. Now, a more established program, you're basically fine tuning what you've got right now and trying to create more development time for those younger players to see how much they've matured since last season, or those kids that are just coming in. Like if you had a high school senior that graduated early, they get a head start in realizing what college is all about, but also get real hits with pads on too as well. I mean, the one thing I think fans really, give too much credit to is the spring game. And because there's always going to be some guy who's lower on the depth chart that just balls out in the spring game. And you got all these fans saying, why isn't this person getting more playing time? Well, that's just one practice. I mean, you got 14 other practices that many times the fans aren't there and they don't see what's going on. They don't see what's happening in training table, what they're doing in workouts, things of that sort, where the coaches and the strength coach are all seeing that all the time. And they're just catching one little snapshot of something that happened in the spring game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, some of these spring games now are pretty weird the way
Yeah.
they do them. They have like the offense versus the defense, and they'll run the ones versus the twos, and then the twos versus the ones. And it's kind of hard to figure out really what the point of that is. So, that's a little bit strange. But I do think it's interesting to look at, what we've got going on right now in some of these bigger programs. A lot of schools right now are scrambling to figure out who their starter is. I think a lot of teams want to know now, especially with some of these schools are getting these kids in January now.
Yeah.
The kids, even the freshmen, are coming in. They're graduating in December. They're enrolling in January. So these kids that are freshmen, incoming freshmen, are there right in spring practice. And I think that gives them a leg up, honestly, over some of the freshmen that come in later. And, we have to talk about the battle going on in Austin. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
Arch has enrolled. He's going to battle it out with Quinn Ewers. Both these guys, I think, is interesting. Both of these kids were the number one overall player in college football. And Ewers was one of the highest rated recruits ever until Arch Manning came about. And I would say that Ewers would keep the job considering he played. He's been in college football for 2 years. He was the starter last year, except, let's be honest, Ewers was 1-4 against ranked opponents last year. He only completed 52% of his passes in those 5 games. He had 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I wasn't that impressed with him, to be honest with you, especially looking back at that TCU game. Texas could have won that game if he just could have completed some balls. What do you think about the battle going on in Austin? Who do you think is going to win it? Do you think Arch has a chance to begin the season as a starter, or do you think it's pretty much going to go to Ewers until he loses the job?
Well, I think the one thing, especially at the quarterback position, if you've got a battle going there, I think 10 years ago, you wanted coaches to come out of spring ball with the quarterback ready to go. Now, the way the transfer portal's set up, I wouldn't be a bit surprised you don't see people naming starting quarterbacks till the week of the game, or the day of the game, or do what Michigan did last year where, you had both guys playing initially, so you don't lose one of those guys in the process. I mean, I think it's changed so much. I mean, personally, if I look at the Texas situation, I think they're going to start Quinn Ewers to start the year, and let it go from there. But I don't know. I mean, we're living in such a new world with this transfer portal. I think coaches have to now sit back and think about what they're going to do, because the second, you and I both know, the second that Sarkisian named Arch Manning the starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers is in the transfer portal again.
Yeah,
so
no, I could see either one of these guys taking off and going somewhere else. I mean, I don't feel like kids are going to sit and wait, anymore. And that's, that's just the world that we live in. And I don't really blame these kids. I don't blame them if they're not playing. They can't make money off their name, image, and likeness if no one knows who they are. So they have to be on the field. So I don't really blame them if they're not getting to play to go. But that's where think about these guys that have really developed in the league, like Aaron Rodgers. He sat for what, 3 or 4 years behind Brett Favre. That worked out really well. If you have the ability to sit and learn how to do it from someone that knows how to do it, it can be a really good thing, but we just don't see that too much anymore.
Well, I look at guys like a perfect example of this is Jalen Hurts, because I guarantee you at some point you're going to see NFL scouts looking at a kid and it's like, can this kid overcome adversity? And you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts. I mean, let's be honest, the Alabama experience was a roller coaster of roller coasters. And the guy is now taking the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl. I mean, having that guy where adversity hits him in the face, can he keep going? Or does he just try to run to the next thing? I mean, a lot of these kids are really stuck in a tough situation where, will they stick it out? Because you and I both know NFL scouts are going to ask that question at some point at the combine.
Yeah, and Hurts is a unique situation. I mean, it's not like Hurts sucked in Alabama. I mean, he won almost every single game he started, and that's what we're seeing more and more of now that you would never expect is when a guy is undefeated, like Kelly Bryant was for the Clemson Tigers, and he gets yanked in favor of Trevor Lawrence. Jalen Hurts, was undefeated when he got benched. Hell, they were in the national championship game when he first got pulled. So. It's kind of a unique world that we live in now, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in Austin. Another battle that I want to ask you about is obviously, the big dogs in the SEC. We've got Alabama and Georgia both not having their starter return. Let's talk about Georgia first, because they've actually got kind of a three-way battle going on right now with Carson Beck, who was the backup to Stetson Bennett. They've got Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton. Do you think that the experience that Beck has gives him a leg up, or do you think it's just open?
I would. I mean, granted, I think Kirby's going to try to drag this out as long as humanly possible, but I do think come first game of the year, Carson Beck is going to be underneath center. I mean, that's the hard part about it, because the second one of these guys realizes they're not getting a job or they're going to be number two. I mean, I think it's between Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. Whoever doesn't get the starting job, the other's going to transfer.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's kind of the world that we're living in now, and it's kind of interesting to see that they've got several freshmen that are all fighting for it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect really Stetson Bennett to win the job, so it's hard for me to tell you that I know who's going to win this job. Because I need to see more film on it. But we're going to study these spring games. We're going to go back and watch all the film we can to see which guy we think is best and whether they think they picked the right guy. Now, one dude that we have seen is from Alabama. We've seen Jalen Milroe. Now, I liked him a little bit more than you did.
Yeah.
But I think this kid's got it going on. And a lot of people are picking Ty Simpson, who has no experience, to win the job over Milroe. But I think those appearances that he made last year, especially the second half against Arkansas, where he led them back to victory, and also against Texas A&M, I think that gives him a little bit of experience, and I think Milroe has a chance to win this job, whereas a lot of people think it's just going to be Simpson all the way.
Well, I could see. I mean, now you've brought Tommy Reeson from Notre Dame as a new OC, taking over for Bill O'Brien. And, this may be a situation where we may walk out of spring practice, and Alabama may be looking at the transfer portal too as well. Because you and I both know coming out of spring practice, somebody's going to jump in on that next portal round. So I could potentially see that as a possibility too as well. You're right. I'm not as big a fan of Milroe. But you look at what Alabama has coming back, they got to develop more at receiver. They were very young at that position. And I mean, they got to just improve overall because they just can't be a one-dimensional team.
Yeah, I mean, Milroe definitely was better at running than he was throwing, but this is a guy who I think can get better at throwing the football. And I think that he showed some poise and he showed some ability to get out there and win, especially in an environment like Arkansas where they were, in a tight ball game.
Yeah.
And he got out there for some competitive snaps, and he obviously felt more comfortable running it. But that's that's going to be expected when you get your first showing out there. You're going to do what you do best. And I feel like he took one read. If it wasn't there, he ran. But with more film study, with more practice, with more reps, he's going to get the ability to look at that first read. If it's not there, go to 2 or go to 3. And I feel like he's a guy that can get better and can definitely compete. So I expect this to be a little bit of a closer battle than others do. You're talking about the portal. Were you surprised they didn't bring anybody in to compete with these two guys at Bama?
I am, but I think they're waiting on something else. I don't know what that is. I mean, that's the thing is sometimes they may have kids who are considering the portal that don't jump in the portal. I mean, you're really running a slot machine on that one. So, I mean, you can only go with what you got. So.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And obviously, we talked about Georgia. We talked about Bama. We got to talk about Ohio State, too. They've got 2 guys coming back that were on the roster last year, Kyle McCord and also Devin Brown. A lot of people are liking this Devin Brown kid. I mean, it was kind of everyone expected it to be Kyle McCord's job to win or lose. But now, we're seeing that, Devin Brown's got a shot, and he changed his number to 33 to go back and be really, really old school. What do you think about the battle at Ohio State? And do you think that Devin Brown has a shot to compete with Kyle McCord?
Well, I mean, I think whoever steps into that job, they've got really big shoes to fill. I mean, you go from bringing in Haskins, Fields, Stroud, and now, I mean, those are 3 unbelievable game-changing, program-changing quarterbacks. Can you keep that streak alive? And you can't tell me for a second these 2 guys aren't sitting there to themselves and thinking, holy crap, I got to keep, I mean, especially with this receiving core. I mean, Harrison is going to be the number 1 receiver coming back. Supposedly did some workouts during the pro days and looked phenomenal. And I think that is whoever can get inside their head the best and control the moment. I think it's going to be the person that's going to walk in and start day one.
Yeah, I mean, does it really matter who the quarterback is? I mean,
but he's still going to sling the ball.
I mean,
he's still going to sling the ball. I mean, let's be honest, because I mean, Henderson, I mean, incredible talent at running back, but is he going to stay healthy?
Yeah, I mean, hell, last year we had Mayan Williams and Henderson both go down. We had Dallin Hayden playing. We had Evan Pryor go down in the fall. I mean, the Buckeyes were down to their 4th and 5th string running backs towards the end of the season. And so that's where, it all fell on C.J. Stroud's shoulders, and he stepped up to the mic. What do you think about the pressure these 2 guys are feeling? I mean, think about it. The last 3 quarterbacks that played at Ohio State have been the Big Ten Player of the Year. We went back to Haskins. We went back to Justin Fields. We go to C.J. Stroud. All 3 of them were the Player of the Year in the Big Ten. It's like you got to be the best player in the conference to even be the quarterback there. I mean, what kind of pressure are these guys feeling?
They just got to play it play by play, day by day. They can't make every throw is going to put them in the starting lineup because one bad move could make cataclysm in their head, and you got to make sure they keep moving ahead in that respect. I mean, let's be honest, of any of the last 7 years, probably this is the year that people think they have their best shot at taking on Ohio State. I mean, and I would be a bit surprised you see Athlons or Street and Smith or any of those they pick Michigan to win the conference, that win the East this year rather than Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, but the team's pretty stacked. I mean,
it is 100%.
I think, breaking in a new quarterback is not something new for Ryan Day. He's had to do it over and over again throughout his tenure. So I don't think he's going to have any trouble this time. I'd be pretty comfortable if I was a quarterback and I was in that program, and I knew that I potentially had a shot coming up. I mean, he's going to get somebody ready.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. One more of these that's kind of interesting to me is right here in Tennessee. Joe Milton did not look good at Michigan his last year as a starter. He transferred to UT. He was only here for a couple of months. He wins the job, goes out, plays pretty well, looks a little bit inconsistent, but does show some flashes. He inevitably gets hurt. Hendon Hooker steps in. The rest is history. Then Hendon Hooker gets hurt. Joe Milton goes back in, wins the Vandy game handily by 60 points, and then takes down Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Now he's got a 5-star recruit, a kid that's got millions of dollars already being given to him just for stepping on campus, and that's obviously the freshman Nico, our boy George's nephew, who's already here.
Yeah.
He actually participated in the bowl practices. Now he's at spring practice. Obviously, I think Joe Milton's going to probably win and be the starter day one. But if he falters, how quickly do they go to him? Or do you think that Nico's got a shot at winning the job?
I think they're going to start off with Joe Milton to play it safe, to tell you the truth. But I'm not going to lie, just with the hype factor on Nico alone, you and I both know if Joe doesn't come out of the gates flying, the talk shows are going to be rampant. They're going to be avid. They're going to want Nico in. The chants are going to begin in the crowd. You know it, and I know it. And let's be honest. The most popular guy in any freaking college roster is the backup quarterback because he's always going to be the savior. Yet he has, there's no downside. There's only upside until he gets on the field. So I think Milton has got, granted, he balled out in the bowl game. He has an incredible arm. But, can he be as accurate as Nico is shown to be through his 7-on-7 films?
Yeah, I think that Coach Heupel's shown that he can make these guys better. Hendon Hooker's development from what he looked like at Virginia Tech to what he looked like the last 2 years was completely different. And I think he can do the same thing with Milton. In fact, I think he's done it. I think we saw it in the Vanderbilt game. We saw it he played pretty well, honestly, when he came in a bad situation in the South Carolina game. So, talking about Tennessee football, I think it's a pretty good segue here to go ahead and bring our guest in. I'm going to go ahead and pop him on here and see if we can talk to him. There he is. Eric, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, buddy. How's it going?
It's going good. How you guys doing?
We're doing real good. We were actually just talking a little Vols football and thought it'd be a good moment to bring you in. Obviously, spring practice has started. A lot of freshmen are already here. Tell us a little bit about what it was like for you to get into your first practice, at Tennessee after you'd been recruited. What was it like? What was the change like going from high school to college football for you?
Well, it's a lot different now. A lot of guys, early enroll. If not in January, they'll go early in June. For me, that was kind of unprecedented back then. All the guys just showed up in August.
Yeah.
There was no social media or anything like that. So, a lot of guys really didn't even know each other. So when I showed up, that was the first time I met my roommate. I had knew of him because he was from Murfreesboro, went to Murfreesboro, Riverdale, but never really, met him outside of just, Friday nights and things like that. So for us, coming in as freshmen, it was very, very different. You showed up, moved in the dorm, a couple of days later, done your physical and all those things. And then you went straight to practice. So there was no time for, to worry about any of the other things that came along with being in college.
Now, you came up out of Jasper, Marion County. What was your recruiting process like? Because I know you played a lot of tailback and safety in high school. Did they talk about having you play linebacker, and what other schools were involved in the process? And why did you pick Tennessee? Because, they were at home, or what was that process like for you?
It was kind of a slow process. I wasn't, a heavily recruited guy. I think, going into my senior year, I didn't have many offers at all. I picked up Memphis was one of my first ones, and then came, Tennessee, Alabama, and a few others. So I'm right, and Jasper, Tennessee is kind of right on the border of Alabama and Tennessee. So my first visit, I went to Memphis, I went to Alabama, I went to Tennessee. So those are kind of, the three that were in my mind. I wasn't, I knew I didn't want to go far away from home. I remember talking to Charlie Strong when he was at Notre Dame. He tried to get me to come up there. I just didn't see myself going that far away from home. So those are kind of the three that, that stuck out to me at that time. The process was a little different than I think it is today. There's a lot of social media aspect to, a lot of the recruitment of a lot of these high school kids. I can remember, at games and my coach telling me that, that Tennessee was coming to watch, a playoff game or, and things like that. So a lot of that was different, when I was being recruited out of high school.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has changed. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that's different now is, like you mentioned, when they started talking to you. I mean, these guys, I went to Knoxville Catholic High School here in town, and we have a kid that's a quarterback that hasn't even played yet. And he's gotten offers from 4 or 5 different schools just from his, training with a quarterback trainer and from playing at 7-on-7s. Just talk to us a little bit about how it has changed. I mean, you're still around the game, obviously, now, and you see what's going on with these high school kids. What differences besides that, the early on, obviously there's social media, the guys contacting them a little bit earlier, but what else, has led to the changes in the recruiting structure that's going on now?
I think the camp culture, a lot of kids are going to camp, early, whether it's 7th grade, 8th grade. I think they're getting seen a lot more than when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I went to one camp. Yeah. And that was a local camp here in Chattanooga, UTC. I didn't go to any other camps because I also played baseball in the summer. So I was busy doing that. So I think nowadays it's just a lot of the camp culture. Coaches are getting to see a lot of different kids when they come to camps, whether it's in the spring or in the summertime. And also, you look back at the, pandemic and all that stuff, even after that, they had a lot of these mega camps in the summertime where there would be 20 colleges at one spot. So they get to see a lot of different kids, and a lot of kids get to showcase their talent in front of a lot of different colleges. So I think a lot of that plays into a lot of these early offers, and kids are just getting seen a lot more.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And just to piggyback off that, these kids today are having to deal with a lot more as far as the recruiting goes. I mean, we've talked to a couple high school coaches on our show, and they said some of their kids are missing out because there aren't as many scholarships available because of all the transfers. There's so many people transferring every year that some people, some coaches want to go out and get a little bit more finished product, and they want to go, fill a need and fill a gap by getting someone who's already played. Tell me what you think about the transfer portal affecting these high school kids, and do you see them potentially going to smaller schools or junior colleges if there's not scholarships available for these kids that maybe aren't looked at as early as some of the other ones?
Yeah, and that kind of goes into my recruitment also. When I got to Tennessee, I played tailback in high school, played safety. So when I got to Tennessee, they really didn't know where I was going to play. So I started out, on the defensive side, started out playing safety. That didn't last very long. I was about 205. So, once you get to college and you start eating in that dining hall, and packing on those pounds, I can remember them coming in and saying, hey, we're going to put you in this nickel package, right before we played Florida. That was the last time I saw safety, during my career. and I say that because, all the guys that I played linebacker with at Tennessee, none of us played linebacker in high school. We
Yep.
were all, even Al played tailback, quarterback, safety. He actually played safety half of the season his freshman year.
Yeah, I remember that.
So a lot of us didn't play the linebacker position in high school. We were molded into linebackers once we got to college. Nowadays, I think, a lot of schools want an already made project. They want a kid that plays linebacker in high school and that's going to come in and fill that void, right away. And I think when you look at the transfer portal, there's a lot of kids who fit that mold that colleges can go get instead of waiting on a high school kid to come along.
Yeah.
When was it when you showed up on campus that you knew, like, this is different? Because, I mean, let's be honest, you look at the talent that was on your roster during practices, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball, was pretty remarkable. When did you realize, holy crap, I got to really step up my game, like, immediately if I'm going to show out in practice?
The very first day. we had to, and that's another thing. We had two-a-days back then. A lot of these kids don't know about the two-a-days, the grind of real two-a-days. Pads on morning, pads on in the afternoon. So the very first day was kind of eye-opening because we did the Tennessee drill. Some people call it the Oklahoma drill, where it's just mano-a-mano. And that right there opened my eyes quickly that I needed to, to strap it up and make sure that I'm on my P's and Q's.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And talk to us a little bit more about that team. I mean, I've lived here since I was 3 years old, and I've never seen anything quite like that football team. I mean, there was talent all over the board. But, there's teams that are talented all the time that can't make it all click and get to that next level and win a championship like that. What do you think in your mind was it that made that team special and made you guys have the ability to win the big games?
I think it was after we lost a lot of our key seniors in '97. Marcus Nash, Peyton, Leonard Little. We lost some key guys off of that '97 team. Yeah. I think it was during our summer workouts that we took it upon ourselves to become a lot closer, to hold each other accountable. So I think it was those summer workouts, that propelled us to be, a dominant team, in the fall. We took it upon ourselves just to, practice hard every day, hold each other accountable, and let everybody know that we're going to play together.
Because there are obviously a ton of people, not only coaches, assistant coaches, players. Who was that motivating person that you found in college ball or even in pro ball that really helped develop you as a player, give you a better mindset, be what you became at UT and moving on, that you've really taken to your post life too as well after football?
My freshman year, I had a guy that, when I got moved to linebacker, I had a guy named Tyrone Hines, who's from Brownsville, Tennessee, went to Haywood High School. And he took me under his wing when I got moved to linebacker. And, I pretty much just followed everything he done. So the funny thing is, if Tyrone would mess up in practice, then you best believe I'm going to mess up in practice because I'm watching everything he does. And I'm trying to emulate, his stance and how he attacks the ball carrier, how he communicates with his fellow teammates. So he was one of those guys that took me under his wing, showed me the ropes and kind of guided me, into becoming the player that I was later on in my career.
Yeah, and they had some, Tennessee obviously had some good coaches there during your time. And after you left, there was some struggles. There was coaches coming in and out, but it looks like they may have found a guy that could potentially do it. And obviously they had a really good season last year. Coach Heupel obviously has a good offensive acumen that he's built up. What did you think about the season this past year, and what do you think about Coach Heupel and what the Vols look like moving forward under him?
This past season was remarkable. I know they had a letdown, towards the end, but you couldn't ask for what those guys done this past season. What the staff done, how they prepared those guys. It was every time those guys stepped out on the field, I thought they could win. And I know a lot of other guys that support the university thought they could win also. It was just a remarkable season, to look back on. And I think they can improve on it even more this coming season. I think they have the pieces in place. They have the leadership in place. So I'm looking forward to an outstanding year this year also.
Now, the combine just got done a couple weeks ago. And what was, from an outsider's perspective, what's the combine like? That's one thing that I can only imagine. It's just got to be kind of nerve-wracking would probably be the best word. But I can't imagine, what's your thought process going through the time period at the combine in Indianapolis?
It's definitely nerve-wracking, somewhat stressful, because you're meeting with a lot of teams. They're asking, a lot of questions, a lot of personal questions about your life, upbringing, things like that. But you're also doing a lot of doctor visits, so pre-existing injuries that you may have had, so they're checking all those things out. And that's all leading up to before you even do your on the field stuff. So it's a lot of early mornings, late nights, meeting with different teams and things like that. So, for guys to go out there and to perform at a high level, it's really remarkable, I think, because a lot of people on the outside don't see what they go through those couple of days leading up to before they even get on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. And talk to us just a little bit more about that. What was it like, once you knew your college career was over, you start heading in to prepare for the combine, I can't remember if they did pro days back then, but, getting ready for that, meeting with teams, and then, about to get drafted, in the process of getting drafted. Talk to us a little bit about what that was like for you and what your experiences was going through that.
For me, it was just trying to stay calm. I knew I was a good player, and I knew that I could play for a lot of different teams. So my agent, he really helped me out with schooling me on certain teams, certain questions that they would ask, who was really interested in me, and things like that at the combine. So I took it in stride. I was well prepared. I met with a lot of different teams, during my combine, and just went out there and performed like I always done.
Now, we always hear about you brought up the questions and sometimes how they're pretty weird. Can you give us an example that a question that you got that you're like, where in the hell is this coming from? And you try to answer it by keeping a straight face. I've heard some weird questions.
Sometimes your favorite food, where'd you hang out in high school, different things like that. I didn't get too many weird ones, but I know you would have guys walking out of meetings and that next morning like God, I can't believe they asked me that. And it's kind of, and the thing about it, the NFL, they do their homework on these guys. They do their homework. So when you're going in there and you're answering those questions, it's probably something that they've already asked somebody or found out about you. But it's crazy.
They want to know if your answer matches up with the research they gathered, huh?
Correct.
That's crazy. Well, man, we really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us this morning, Eric. I was always a huge fan of yours, and we couldn't appreciate it anymore, you joining us today and talking a little college football with us.
Man, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys have a great show, and I look to see you guys continue the success with this.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you again real soon. Okay, Eric?
All right. See you guys later.
All right, man.
Hey,
Thank you
have a
so
great
much.
day.
Have a good one. All right. That was the legend, man, Eric Westmoreland, badass linebacker for the Vols. It's interesting to me talking to him. I really enjoyed hearing that part about how during that time period, John Chavis, the defensive coordinator, Phil Fulmer, the head coach, they didn't want linebackers coming in there to be linebackers. They got guys that played running back. They got guys that played different positions. They brought them in and they molded them to be the kind of linebackers they wanted. I thought that was very interesting takeaway from talking with him, and I thought that was kind of cool how they did that, and it certainly worked.
Oh, absolutely. It was funny when he brought that up because I remember it was Tom Osborne when he was at Nebraska. Who was the defensive coordinator there that created the black shirts? I'm trying to remember. It was it Charlie McBride? I think it was Charlie
so.
Yeah. They after they got beat in one of their Orange Bowl games and they realized how much slower they were, they created a different recruiting philosophy where corners became safety, safety became linebackers, outside linebackers became middle linebacker. Like you had to move up the position through the process, and they never recruited you for the position you played in high school. And it makes a lot of sense because if you've got the speed and they just put on the pounds and do it the right way, you're going to keep the speed, if not increase it. And it just makes so much sense of how that whole same thought process was being utilized at Tennessee too, as well.
Yeah, it worked. And Eric, our guest today, was certainly a part of one of the greatest linebacking cores that I've ever seen. The group of linebackers they had during that time period, the Raynoch Thompson, Al Wilson, Eric Westmoreland, that group of guys. He's talking about, Leonard Little, who was a defensive end to begin with. And then, they moved him to middle linebacker to fill a need. And he was more of a down lineman as proved in his NFL career, but he got it done, man. And I don't think people understand today what those defenses were like. There was times where the offense, couldn't get the ball in the end zone, but they still won games because of the way how that defense performed. I mean, I got a boy right here, Sean Ellis, today. That guy wreaked havoc in the backfield. John Henderson, Albert Hainsworth. I mean, some of the greatest defensive linemen in the history of the SEC were on those teams that Eric was a part of.
Well, not only that, I mean, look at their defensive backfield too, as well. I mean, you had Grant, Goodrich, and Terry Fair. I mean, it keeps going on and on. I mean, they were just so stacked. I mean, think about how much easier it was for that linebacking core when that front line is really clogging everything up. I mean, they're making it difficult in that offensive line for them to go in and just pile drive those running backs. I mean, look at the numbers alone. I mean, 10, 11 tackles for loss just from our guest today during each of his last 3 years at Tennessee. I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
that was I didn't even realize that until I'd talk to Eric and I'd ask him if he'd come on the show, and I was just kind of going back through some of the stats from those teams, and I looked down and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, he had 10 tackles for loss 3 consecutive seasons, and I was like, I never even heard anybody mention that. But that's a huge number for a guy that played linebacker. He wasn't even a D lineman, on with his hand in the dirt. He was a guy that played off the ball and got in the backfield to make over 10 tackles for loss 3 years in a row, and ended up having a great NFL career as well, playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars as well as the Cleveland Browns. So truly appreciate Mr. Westmoreland joining us today. It was cool to talk to him. He had some great stories and kind of a unique perspective on things. But we're gonna, as we talked about, we're gonna come back and dig into these battles a little bit more. I want to really get into which guy we think is going to win these quarterback battles and which teams we think are going to have success. The only team that we didn't talk about, which I think is worth mentioning. We talked about Tennessee, we talked about Alabama. One team that's kind of got a unique situation is Ole Miss. They have 3 transfers now on the same roster. They've got Jackson Dart, who transferred from USC. They've got Spencer Sanders, who obviously was a long-term starting quarterback at Oklahoma State. And then they have Walker Howard, who was a big-time recruit who went to LSU and signed, I believe he was a 2022 signee with the LSU class. But with Jaden Daniels still being there and with Garrett Nussmeier pushing for time, he transferred to Ole Miss. What do you think about these three guys, and which one do you see as having a leg up in this battle?
Well, I mean, it's Lane Kiffin. You don't know anything. I mean, heck, if you'd have told me last year that they were going to be a more run-heavy team than a pass-happy team, I would have said you're crazy, because that's never been really Lane Kiffin's style. But I mean, you look at, how well that running game really transferred last year. I mean, kind of hard not to. And well, that guy's still back there in Oxford. So, I mean, personally, I think they're going to start off with Jackson Dart. But I mean, you look at Spencer's time at Oklahoma State. You didn't know from second to second what you were going to get. He was either brilliant or eh. And Walker Howard's got a, definite big name behind him. So.
Yeah, no, and that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that I thought was interesting was, Ole Miss started off 7-0.
Yeah.
They spent 3 weeks in the top 10 in October, and you were like, whoa, is this team? I didn't expect them. I thought they'd take a step back after losing what they lost the year before.
I did
Matt
too.
Corral, the linebacker, 44, who got drafted. A lot of guys, took off, and I expected them to kind of take a step back, and then boom, there they are, 7-0, top 10 team, and then they lost, I believe, 5 of their last 6.
Yeah.
And because of that, I feel like Jackson Dart is not entrenched as the starter. I think because of what happened at the end of the year, I think that's one of the reasons they brought Spencer Sanders in. I think that's one of the reasons they brought Walker Howard in. I feel like they want competition to either make Jackson Dart be better or to replace him.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's be honest. When is there anything ever stable within a Lane Kiffin system? Once you think things are solid, they're never solid. Which I personally, I kind of like that, because you're always not taking your life for granted in his system, and you're always fighting to be better than who you are. I mean, is he unorthodox? Oh, hell yeah. But I mean, the success shows what he has done at a program where, let's be honest, the NIL dollars aren't probably as great in Oxford as they are in Auburn or Tuscaloosa or Athens. I mean, or Gainesville for that matter. I mean, do you think I'm wrong?
No, that's why I was kind of surprised that he got all these guys to come there.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of surprised that he stayed there. I thought Lane Kiffin might jump for another job. I do think he's trying to shake that kind of jump around coaching mentality that's kind of been put on him after, what he did here in Knoxville, leaving in the middle of the night and going to USC after 10 months. And then, going from FAU, he was there for a couple of years. Then he went to Ole Miss. I think he just wants to kind of be somewhere for a little bit longer, which I think is smart. For him. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a really good idea. And Ole Miss does have some money now. They're an SEC team. There's some rich folk that live in Memphis that are big Ole Miss fans, and people down in the Grove that have some deep pockets. So these kids can get paid if they want to, especially if they keep having success and being a top 10 team. They'll get noticed, and they'll be able to make a little cash. So. I just thought that was another interesting one. Is there any other battles that I'm forgetting that you're thinking about that we can talk more about in the coming weeks?
I honestly think there are a couple that I would bring up. UCLA is one I think that we should keep our eye on, especially with Dante Moore committing there from Michigan. Yeah. The Wisconsin battle where I think Tanner Mordecai is going to get the job, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a radical shift in their offensive philosophy than what you saw from Christ and Bielema and Alvarez. I mean, Phil Longo coming in to be the OC. I mean, I don't know if they've got the personnel at the receiver position to do what they want to do. Yeah, I mean, those two schools off the top of my head are ones that I would be sitting. Some of them are a little more stable. You look at like Penn State, Drew Lars probably got the job pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I like the UCLA mention. Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR, was there for 5 years.
yeah,
And he started 48 of the 56 games that Chip Kelly's been the coach. So
yeah,
this team's going to look different without DTR. And I think I think people sleep on DTR a little bit.
I agree.
He went to the combine and got some rave reviews. People didn't expect him to be able to throw like that.
Yeah,
And I wasn't shocked at all because I thought he was a really good quarterback and was underrated. So I think you're going to see DTR get drafted by somebody.
Yeah.
It may be day 2 or day 3, but I do think we're going to see DTR get drafted. And that's why I think this battle is going to be interesting. You mentioned Dante Moore. There's also Colin Schlee.
Yeah.
The transfer from Kent State.
Kent State.
He had a pretty good career in the MAC. He was an all MAC selection. He had 17 touchdowns. But he doesn't have the upside that Moore has, obviously being the number 4 overall prospect. That was, to me, was a huge get for UCLA.
Yes, and unexpected. I mean, honestly, they kind of came out of nowhere and got him, and it really kind of shocked me. I mean, another guy that people are forgetting about is Ethan Garbers, the old Oregon 5-star.
Yeah.
I mean, he just can't find a way to get on the freaking field in Eugene, so now he's taking his talents to Westwood and see what happens there in the Chip Kelly system.
Yeah, didn't he initially sign with Washington?
Yeah.
Garbers?
Yeah.
And he was a pretty big recruit in the 2020 cycle.
Yeah.
So I think, they've got some depth there at the position, which I don't really feel like they've had the last few years. It's kind of been DTR or bust. And when he's been banged up, they've been in trouble. So I think that'll be interesting. I think UCLA is taking that next step, in my opinion. We saw their offensive and defensive lines improve so much in the past few years that I think it's going to be easier for whoever plays quarterback than it was for DTR coming in. So
yeah,
that'll be something to watch. But great show today. We pushed through. Both of us were a little sleepy when we started, but we made it happen. I really enjoyed talking some ball today with Eric Westmoreland. And getting into some of these QB battles. We got spring games coming up in the next couple of weeks. I know that we don't want to read too much into those, but we do want to see how some of these younger guys fit in and see what some of these other guys that haven't gotten to play a whole lot look like when they're on the field. So which, if any, of these spring games are you looking forward to taking a look at, James?
I think the ones we talked about before on the quarterback battles, I mean, there's just, I think they're really, I mean, we've already had some spring games already happen, like Bowling Green, Hawaii, Georgia State, and New Mexico have already gone off the board, but the real ones really begin now in April. I think the quarterback ones are going to be the ones to really watch out for and see what happens. So.
Yeah. No, they had a big season here in Knoxville, so now they're charging to get into the spring game. So bring your wallets, folks. It is no longer free. You win a couple games, you improve the program a little bit. So you got to bump the ticket prices and then start charging for people to come watch practice.
I mean, heck, the last spring game is San Jose State on May 6th. That is crazy.
May 6th.
That is insane how late that is.
Yeah, that's a month away. What are they doing? They started practice? I mean,
no, they don't start till April 4th.
Wow. That's crazy. A lot of people will be out of school by then. So
yeah.
We'll have to see what that's about. But anyways, thanks for showing up today and
absolutely.
I appreciate you. We're gonna come back and have some more shows in the off season because football never stops. But we enjoyed getting to talk to Eric Westmoreland today and get a little bit of take back in time to the 1998 national championship that the Volunteers took home. Eric was a big part of that.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
that was one of the best teams I've ever seen play. So really enjoyed having him on today. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure to go to YouTube, search for Man Coverage Nate or James, and it'll pop up. Subscribe and watch any of the shows that we've had, and also check out any of the interviews, as we've got those cut out of the shows, so you can just watch the interviews we've got. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. James, have a great rest of your Sabbath, and I'll talk to you again real soon, okay?
All right, talk to you then.
All right, keep them up.
Later.